Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. I want to start with the big issue of the week, penalty rates. And going right back to first principles, Anthony Albanese, is your time on a Sunday really still worth, in this day and age, 33% more than a Saturday?
Well, I'll tell you what, Parliament doesn't sit on a Sunday. Sunday is still a very...
Nor a Saturday.
Sunday is still a very special day. And when I was a student, I got myself through uni in part by working the 11 p.m. Saturday night to 7 a.m. Sunday shift at Pancakes on the Rocks. Now, as a 19 and 20-year-old, giving up my Saturday nights and being bleary-eyed for the rest of Sunday, I fully expected proper compensation, and I got it. And the truth is that so many people out there rely upon penalty rates to pay their mortgage, to put food on the table of their kids. And this is about their living standards.
Sure, and we'll talk about overall wages a little later. But Arthur, just your thoughts on Sunday versus Saturday, because that's what this is about. It's not about Sunday versus Wednesday, it's Sunday versus Saturday.
Well, I think, David, we don't sort of live in a society these days where things used to close after 5 o'clock, or at hotels you had the 6 o'clock swill, and on weekends shopping habits have changed, what people do has changed. So yes, life has moved on, and this is not about trying to sort of say that one particular section of the community should bear the brunt of economic change. Economic change is happening all around us, and we're having to adjust in a lot of ways. And this is another example of where a change is occurring. We have to figure out how this change can be managed in the interests not just of the economy in the broad, but of the people who are directly affected, so that we get a change which is consistent with where I think the Commission has come out, which is change is justified. How do we now do it in a way which also best looks after the people who are potentially involved? Well, and I take Albo's point about people who have chosen to work or maximise their income by working particular parts of the week, but this is not a situation where you have a commission which has taken a long time to come to a considered view, looked at all the arguments and suggested change is appropriate, it can be beneficial. The question now is, how do you implement that change in an empathetic and forward-looking way?
Well, the Prime Minister did have something to say on that just yesterday after blaming Labor essentially for the decision of the independent umpire all week. This is what Malcolm Turnbull said yesterday.
We're very supportive of the Commission managing this transition in a way that ensures that take-home pay is, as far as possible, maintained.
So, Arthur Sinodinos, will the government actually put a submission into Fair Work to push for that phasing in of this rates decision?
David, we're having a discussion to that effect at Cabinet next week, so I expect that there would be a submission, but that's ultimately a matter for the Cabinet about the content of any submission. But the point the Prime Minister was making is that we have had this Commission look at this. The Commission in its own decision indicated that there were transitional arrangements that had to be considered. It welcomed submissions on that. They've looked at this complex issue which arises out of reviews to the modern award system which have been going on over a period, which have been part of the Fair Work Commission's work. Fair Work Commission which was remodelled under Labor, so this is a process going on for some time. One of the victories of Labor in, I think, 2007 was to get the Liberal Party, the coalition, to accept that there needed to be a remodelled Industrial Relations Commission which became the Fair Work Commission. We have said since we will stick by the umpire's decisions.
Well, that's the point here, really, isn't it, Anthony Albanese? Because this is an independent umpire. It was a former ACTU boss who's heading it up, Ian Ross. Why is this decision so egregious that you have to make a call to intervene? Because where does that end? I mean, do we intervene with the Reserve Bank of Australia next time they do an interest rate rise that we don't like?
The fact is that when the government just last year didn't like a decision of the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal, they didn't just say, oh, we should revisit that decision. They abolished the tribunal and left nothing in its place dealing with safety in heavy vehicles. So we're not going to be lectured by the government about process. What we're concerned about is people.
Do you welcome the phasing in, though, if that does indeed come to pass, because that would be cushioned somewhat by wages growth.
I just find it quite extraordinary that the Commission could come down with a decision that cuts the real wages of people who are some of the poorest workers in society. And that's essentially what this decision has done. At a time when we have record profits, where we have senior executives getting these huge bonuses, those people at the bottom, and they're the people who are working on Sundays getting these penalty rates, they're the ones who've copped a cut to their living standards. And it's the first time since we've had arbitration commissions for over 100 years, it's true. But it's the first time that we've ever seen a decision handed down with that cut to living standards, a cut to real wages.
Just very briefly, Arthur, that's the bottom line, isn't it? Because even with a phase-in, they will be worse off.
Please,
so
David,
how do you confront
David, that
those
is a
attacks?
nonsense. What Anthony just said is a nonsense. The Arbitration Commission, the Industrial Relations Commission have handed down plenty of judgments where they varied wages in particular industries
They don't cut
up
wages.
and down.
They don't cut wages, Arthur.
Anthony,
Name
if you
one
remember,
when they've cut wages for a whole group of people, for hundreds of thousands of people across the board.
Albo, modern award modernisation has required the Commission to look exactly at how you meld different awards together. It's led to some going up, others going down, and then there have been processes to smooth the introduction of these changes to ameliorate the impact on the workforce. You should have a real knowledge of this. It's meant to be part of Labor policy. My concern here is that Albo and the Labor Party have effectively just gutted the Fair Work Commission. What they're really saying to small businesses, to Australian workers, is that after the next election, there'll be no Fair Work Commission. We're going to set wages and prices in Canberra, and it'll be at the behest of whoever runs the Labor Party. And these days, the Labor Party is run by the unions.
Well, one thing that does have a big impact on wages, albeit a bit of a lag effect, is the economy. And there was some good news on the economy this week. This was Scott Morrison.
Once again, Australia is growing faster than all the major developed economies in the world.
Arthur Sinodinos, should we thank the government for this good turn of events?
There are a couple of things here. The government creates a framework and an environment for economic growth, but ultimately it's risk takers and entrepreneurs and Australian workers who deliver those results. But what the government is doing by pursuing budget repair, by continuing to have structural reform in the economy, my portfolio is at the forefront of that process, is creating signals to promote confidence in Australia. You look at any confidence index at the moment, they're all up. The NAB confidence index is up. Manufacturing jobs have increased by 100,000 in the last year. All the signs are there that there's a revival in business investment coming.
Anthony Albanese, Scott Morrison says that Chris Bowen has been pretty quiet this week in relation to those numbers.
What we have under this government is higher debt, higher deficit, higher unemployment, lower wages growth, and on their watch. An economy does need to grow, but it needs to grow not as the end in itself, so as to lift living standards. And what we're seeing at the moment is real wages being, in terms of wage increases, being the lowest, the flattest they have been for a generation. And of course, that on top of that is the context for this Fair Work decision on penalty rates.